Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Disability Perspective. I've got a friendly co-host today, Terry Hansen. And Terry, you know our guests probably as well as anybody here, so why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
Well, Dave and I have been fishing, and he's done a lot of hunting, but we've done fishing and stuff together with capable partners. This is Dave Guzzi, officially known as Guzzi.
That's right.
And Dave, you're here to tell us about, well, where you're working, and why don't you give us a little breakdown of where it is, what it is, and then what it does for people with disabilities.
So I'm with the Minnesota Valley Refuge Friends Group, and what we do is provide opportunities for all individuals, but our primarily focus at this juncture is kids programs K through 8.
Sure, okay.
And what I like to say is we provide an outdoor living science classroom for them.
Okay.
So as an example, we've done a watershed program with the Bloomington Richfield School District where we bust in on several occasions about 80 kids.
Okay.
And they'll bring some paraprofessionals with them. We'll break up into groups of 8 or 10, and we go off on little mini adventures in and around the Minnesota Valley. And because I'm in a chair, the place that we pick for that is completely accessible.
Well, that's very nice. And which location is that?
That is at the Bloomington Visitor Center.
Okay.
And we have another visitor center which is also 100% accessible. That's in the Carver Rapids Lake unit. Nearest town is called Carver, Minnesota.
Oh, okay, okay. So you're geared towards kids, but you get kids of all abilities, so.
Kids of all, adults of all abilities, really, and that's one of the other things that we're next step for us is to partner with an assisted living campus.
Oh, okay.
And we will pay for the transportation for those participants, adults, to come down and utilize either the visitor center, which is again accessible. The bathrooms have been remodeled, so they are attendant friendly as well. And we have bird feeders that are replenished daily.
Okay.
So that's all accessible. And you've been out to the observation deck.
Yep.
On decent weather days. That's really a wonderful place to be.
Yeah, you get out there, and I was seeing species of birds I don't think I've ever seen before in my life.
Right.
And that's a really cool experience out there. And with the assisted living adults, it gives them the opportunity to be able to get out in nature, for one thing, and to have activities so they're not just sitting around the house all day, basically.
Right. You know, I spent a year of my life, and I'm not going to venture to guess what Terry might have done, living in a place other than your own home, but I know what those four walls look like, and it's pretty bleak. And the opportunity just to, number one, get on a bus is kind of fun.
Yeah. And
to be able to be outside is also kind of fun, and then to see some critters that you may or may not have ever seen before is pretty neat too.
Yeah, I saw a lot of gophers that day.
Yes.
That I don't normally see in my neighborhood. So,
right.
Terry, you've known Dave for a while. What about what he does have you been familiar with?
Well, I haven't been on one of those. I've been on a couple of the fishing piers that have been put out. I don't know that that's your organization, but those are really nice. I had some goddaughters and their kids. I took them out. We went onto a pier and they caught a bunch of little fish and had a great time. And anytime I can fish is a good time.
Right.
So I know you had talked years ago about trout fishing, and I'm not sure the old arm would hold up very long for that type. I'm more of walleye, either jigging or bobber fishing. That's good for me. But you can sit and fish and watch the birds and the gophers and that kind of stuff at the same time and catch fish. So that's what I would be interested in.
Our Bass Ponds unit, and this is all Googleable. If you just went Minnesota Valley Bass Ponds, you can find it. That dock actually, Capable Partners helped make and improve it to be 100% accessible.
Okay.
About 10 years ago. We
Okay.
put money in for that.
Okay.
And we'll bring kids out there. The culmination of one of their events is, and capable partners paid for that too. We present them with a fishing rod and a little box of tackle.
Yep.
And I tell everybody that's a helper, please wear eye protection.
Yes. Yeah.
and smash the barb on the hook, so
Yep.
if it does go in someplace you don't want it, you can get it out.
Exactly.
But
yes.
the kids are down there, and the Department of Natural Resources, if it's in their time frame or availability, they will stock those ponds. So that's right in near Bloomington.
Okay. And so I believe that it must be like a catch and release program, though. Or are they permitted to
when
keep
I've
a few?
taken kids out, I always make it catch and release. And Terry and I have been on a couple of those trips together. Although I think one little boy demanded that he bring his prize bass home with him, and
I think
we allowed it.
if they can figure out how to clean them, they'd like to take fish
Right.
and that stuff. But we don't really have that. Some of the places that I've been, they don't have that facility, and they certainly don't want you leaving
Right.
the leavings any place around on their property. So it would depend on if they want to take it home and clean them themselves.
Right.
And that stuff. So when I went with my goddaughter's kids, we didn't keep any fish. So they brought breakfast sandwiches down. We spread everything out on the deck, and we're eating and fishing and eating and fishing, and that was pretty good. That was a lot of fun. But they caught some sunfish about this big, and the youngest one was 8 years old, and I just gave them ice fishing rods. So she's just sitting on, her feet are dangling in, and she's just jigging it just perfectly, and caught one, and she was just ecstatic. It was just way too much fun to watch that. So
Yeah, it's that
that is good.
That first discovery when they actually catch the fish.
Yes. Yep.
What kind of programs do you guys offer out there for everybody? I mean, between kids, adults, disabled.
Yeah, sure. We have what we call Friends events, where we'll have folks come and do tour the art gallery,
Okay.
and we'll provide snacks and beverages for those. That's all on our event calendar. Some of the other things that we've done in the past is you can come to the visitor center and utilize snowshoes
Oh.
at free of charge.
Okay.
We have a bookstore that's well stocked with little trinkets that we would like you to consider purchasing.
Okay.
All those proceeds go back to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and so our nonprofit does have an executive director. 80% of the monies that come in are redistributed back out into the community.
Okay. So that it's pretty well run in that respect, that it gets most of the proceeds back into the programs.
I think for the size we are, and being on their board now, I think this is my 7th year and my last. I'm going to make room for those younger people to get up and
Yeah.
get involved.
That's good. You mentioned the snowshoes. Well, that rental had to been a little low this year because we've had one of our milder winters. Couldn't tell by looking outside today, but
Yeah.
So we actually had a hybrid event, and we couldn't use snowshoes, but they set up a candlelight
Okay.
or little accessible walking trail
Sure.
in and around the visitor center, and then we provided hot cocoa. That was Saturday night. You guys missed out.
Yeah.
And kettle corn.
Very nice.
And there's little stations broken out, and typically these are families that'll come. And they have what I call little learning pods about where you can learn about pelted animals or birds,
Okay.
or some of I call them weeds, but I mean are the prairie plants that
Right.
are still there in the bottoms, and other critters that are resident in the area.
And how did your organization get the land that they're operating on? Was it donated? Was it already federal land?
Sure, I can talk about that. I think it was the very first 300 and 80 acres were signed into law when Mark Dayton was still Senator Mark Dayton.
Okay.
That was 1983, 4,
Okay.
something of that nature, if I remember correctly. We started with 380 acres, and because of a lawsuit against the Minnesota Airport Commission for noise abatement, when they extended a runway, the federal government received a check for $26 million that went into a trust, and with smart investing, that money is still about $25 million, but the proceeds from that initial investment have procured 14,000 plus acres.
Wow.
And so
Okay.
we really start or end, depending on how you look at it, at the confines of the Mississippi River, which is closest to Fort Snelling State
Sure.
Park, and then we go all the way upriver into Belle Plaine.
Okay. That's quite a nice area then. And is all of that park accessible, all that land accessible to visitors in general?
It is, there are areas, the trail systems are all accessible
Okay.
for, I'll just call it, we'll start with able-bodied folks.
Sure.
Okay? And through sort of a hybrid funding program through the Department of Natural Resources and the state of Minnesota, they are putting in hard surfaces.
Okay.
And those hard surfaces are going to be friendly for road bikes, wheelchairs, rollerblading,
Okay.
etc. And so then I would call us 100% ADA compliant. There's other trails in other parts of the valley just due to the nature of being in a terrain
You're right.
enriched area that it is not going to be wheelchair friendly.
Right.
But I would say the potential is for at least 3/4 of it to be accessible,
Okay.
which is really unique. And plus we are the nation's largest urban-based refuge. And oh, by the way, everything's free of charge.
Can't complain about the price then.
No.
Terry, you got anything for him?
Well, I was just going to say, talking with that path, we were down in Florida one time and went into a refuge that was, it was like a dock. It was all wooden slats, and so you're bouncing around, and it went for, it seemed miles that we wheeled around in there, and birds and plants that I had no idea what they were, and I've forgotten any of them now, but it was really neat to see that. But that was, that's before I got the power assist on my chair, so we were pretty tuckered by the time the day was over. But they had spots to pull off and explain, what was there and everything like that. So it sounds like the same kind of deal, but the hard surface would be easier, of course, to wheel on,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
opposed to the. And sometimes there were some slats missing that you had to hop over, and that's so it was kind of interesting that way too. But
Yeah.
this sounds like somewhat the similar thing.
The biggest challenge that we have is because we're in a floodplain.
Sure.
The hydrologists would call it river bounce. And when we get those flood conditions, we get to a point where nobody can get down there.
Yeah.
And then for a bit afterwards, there might be some mud flat problems until the equipment can get in and scrape things back down to the trail.
Okay. And given that, what is there a lot of upkeep money to go towards the dock areas and the places that I'd been out there? If a rail breaks or whatever, or just age has gotten to them.
Some of that comes out of the regular funding from the Fish and Wildlife. Anything that's, I would say most of it actually comes out of their regular funding. And there's been, like I said, couple of the different dock systems for the wheelchair access was paid for by another nonprofit that was Capable Partners at the time.
Okay.
And then we've contributed, our friends group have contributed some of the monies for that as well. But the great majority comes out right from the Fish and Wildlife budget.
Okay. So it is somewhat of a group effort, but again, the majority comes from Fish and Wildlife. Okay. You intimated to us earlier, before we started shooting, that there's something coming up in the next year. You said there's some
Right,
good changes.
Yeah, from our Bloomington Visitor Center, and I don't know the exact elevation change, but I'm going to guess it's probably 80 or 90 feet
Okay.
differential from our visitor center down to the bottom of the trail. Once the hard trail surface is being put in, ultimately we're going to have a connection between those two elevation changes that'll be compliant.
Okay.
Not that we'll want to push it,
Right.
but it'll be pushable.
Okay.
The one they had up on Islands of Peace on the Mississippi
Right.
had that a lot of fun going down.
Switchbacks.
Switchbacks, that's what I was looking for. We went down there one time and ran into about 3 deer,
Right.
and they took off. I could not believe the noise that they made on that blacktop path and across the wooden bridge and that. But that was back before I had the power assist, and that was definitely hauling your tackle box and their rods back up there was definitely a chore. They always say, well, how can you guys go fish for 8 or 10 hours? I said, if you worked as hard as we did getting to and from the water, you need 10 hours in between.
Just to rebuild that strength, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
Well, and you know, as we age, I'll be 66 in a bit, and
Just
I'm
a
not
kid?
going to. Just a kid. Yeah, I'm not. I won't ask either of you how your age is, but as we age, adding power assist to your chair is, for me, has been a life changer.
Certainly. You said there's some upcoming programs in the spring and summer coming up for everybody that visits.
Yeah, the event, again, it'll be on our event calendar, but we're going to do more friends organized events, and it'll be
Okay.
come and meet and greet, and we will, you know, if I'm going to host it, I'll make sure that it's accessible.
Okay.
And some of the greatest places, I think, for access are either of the visitor center and their immediate trail systems around them, and then the Old Cedar Bridge area. And that is, anybody that's lived in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and started driving a car in the 70s or sooner probably drove across the Old Cedar Avenue Bridge.
At some point or another, yeah.
Right, and that has been repurposed, and it's a walk, rollover, non-automobile kind of bridge now, and we utilize that for a lot of our gatherings.
Okay. Derek?
I used to work at the county highway department, and I remember the Cedar Bridge always having to worry in the spring if that was underwater or, you know, do we have to block that off or not? But I haven't been down there to see it now. That would be interesting. A lot of those things I just learned over the radio. I was a dispatcher, and would have to send somebody down and check on the Cedar Avenue Bridge. Yep, it's underwater. Okay, let's block that off. So.
Well, and I presume you still have that issue from time to time, especially around spring melt and all that.
Yes, it's. I think the easiest way is to go onto the website and figure it out if we're open or the trail system is open or not.
Yep.
And what is the website?
Ours is if you just Google Minnesota Valley Refuge Friends
Okay.
.org,
All right.
you'll find us.
All right.
And if you just Google the Minnesota Valley Refuge,
It'll take you
you'll
there.
find us.
All right. We'll make sure that's on the screen for our viewers to see. Now, so you have a couple of events coming up, spring and summer. What are other things to watch for as the seasons change out there? It's got to be pretty wild, different flora or animals come through.
Yeah, I think as the floodwaters drop, probably the best viewing times are, I think, maybe May 1st through the end of June, and you'll have things like the painted turtles.
Okay.
So painted turtles will the hatchlings will hatch in the fall,
Okay.
and they'll bury themselves in the mud or go down on the bottom of a water feature and hide.
Okay.
and then they hibernate underwater that whole winter, just the little guys. And they'll be about, the size of an old silver dollar, and I just dated myself, didn't I?
Yeah.
And they'll be about the size of a 50 cents piece, and I still dated myself. But in any case, those you can identify. You can pick them up by the side, turn them on the bottom, and they're brilliantly colored.
Okay.
They're actually leaving the water and going to try and find something to eat.
Okay.
And boy, the garter snakes are out roaming around and all kinds of things in the
I
spring.
could do without that.
Yeah, well, just remember, they're not going to hurt you.
Oh, yeah.
Just don't
And
hurt them.
The returning waterfowl, and
Okay.
then somewhere around mid-May to end of May, fawns are going to be being born.
Okay. Now, do you get like what type of waterfowl do you get? It swan, duck.
We'll get greater and lesser Canada geese. We'll get swans. Boy, just about every variety of puddle duck known to Minnesota. But primarily you'll get mallards, blue-winged teal, wood ducks, and shovelers, I think, are the primary
Okay.
species that'll come back through the area.
Do you get any cranes down in that area at all?
We get some, but if you really want to see a crane show in Minnesota, you go to Sherburne National Wildlife Refuge, and that's almost second to none. It's incredible.
Okay. And and you stock the ponds there with the fish, correct?
The DNR does.
DNR does. And many species, there's a walleye, sunfish.
Well, I think unfortunately there probably are the old-fashioned sunfish, pumpkin
Okay.
seeds. That's
Oh.
generally what's stocked, but what's in there is also catfish, bullhead, northern.
Okay. And they pull it up, take a picture, and put her back, right?
If
That's the way you would do it.
Yeah, that's the way I do it.
Okay. Okay.
Unless Terry's cleaning it.
No. We'd get pretty hungry if you waited for me to clean a fish.
You like catching them, just don't like cleaning them.
I don't like cleaning them and I don't like eating them, but I'll catch them all day long.
Well, properly fried, I'll eat walleye
too.
all day long. But I'm with you. I won't clean it myself. But my nephew does all the fishing in the family, and he brings back plenty. And he's got himself a couple of trophy sizes, but he does the right thing. He takes a picture and sends them back. Now, do you have daily activities out there, or what's the day-to-day out there outside of the big group meetings and such?
Well, our visitor center, unfortunately, due to federal constraints in funding, we are only open to the public Thursdays. To the buildings are open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 to 4.
Okay.
Open to the public, that's the indoor spaces. The outdoor spaces are open, I think, from sunrise to 8, 9 o'clock at night.
Okay. And you say that it's open public, they can walk the trails, whatnot. But given the time constraints, is it policed in any way?
We are understaffed in that particular area, for sure. Yes, we have a couple of enforcement officers, but they work cooperatively with the other communities.
Okay. Terry?
You just ring a bell and it's time to leave at the park.
Yeah, right.
When I was in Japan, when anything was over or about to be over, you'd hear Old Lang Syne being played over in a loudspeaker, and everybody except me knew that it was time to leave. And everybody would go, so I just go with them. But it was something on that order, I suppose, you could do. And that was like out at camp when it was lunchtime, they rang the big bell and you knew what to do.
Yeah, that's what we need to do,
There
get
you
a
go.
bill.
Yep, yep.
Just put a little speaker out there and ring a bell in it and say,
Yes.
closing time, folks,
Yep.
time to go home. You don't have to stay here, but you got to be somewhere else.
Yep.
All right.
So, now, really appreciate hearing about this. You got the 4 days a week basically that are open to the public with the buildings.
Yes.
What will they find in the buildings? What do you change displays on a seasonal basis, or?
In our bookstore, the inventory does somewhat change in terms of the bird feeders. The biggest thing that changed are the birds of the season.
Okay.
The juncos are actually people that talk about northern birds that migrate down into our part of Minnesota, southern Minnesota. One of them is called a junco.
Okay.
That's more of a Canadian nesting bird, or way up north kind of nesting bird. We didn't see many of them at the feeders this year. And I'm no bird person per se, but that's one that we didn't see. Normally, well, here's another one that I didn't think about. The turkeys are going to start puffing up and gobbling, and the males are going to be strutting around and showing their stuff off pretty quick.
Yeah, well,
That's really neat, and you can see that right in the Bloomington Center behind glass.
I see them in my own neighborhood. They tend to be very populous around there.
Right.
You mentioned the feeders. Has there ever been talk of like putting digital cameras on them so people can see them online?
No, but that's a great idea.
Because I know we've seen it with like eagles' nests and such, and I think you could serve the public that can't get there and say, let's see what birds are feeding today. So something to take home, and if it makes money for you, I'll take a cut.
There you
All
go.
right.
So, Terry, you got anything for him?
Well, my brother-in-law and nephews they bought an old farm, and they're setting it up for deer hunting, and they've got trail cameras up, and then they can view the trail camera on their phones.
Okay.
So they'll show me deer that have gone by and stuff. So I think you can do that on that same deal. Would be, 'cause I'm not sure I'm going to be trucking up through there. And again, you said you didn't bring your dog in today because I'm quite allergic to that. But 2 nephews have 2 dogs, and of course they're hunters, so they'd be there all the time.
Oh yeah.
So it'd be much safer for me to watch it on my phone than it would
There
be
you go.
to actually
Yeah.
go there. So that sounds like it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I think those eagle cams are interesting too, and you
Yeah.
can watch that. Then they have something with a bear near Duluth or something like that.
Yeah, or in that
had it-
area, the Cloquet
Or is
area.
it
I
a den or
believe.
something like that? Yeah.
Yep. The
Yeah.
DNR does have those. And I'm not sure where the Eagle camera, is that through the Audubon Society or
Yeah, and
the Rapture
I believe
Center?
it's
I'm not
like
sure.
in the lower Minnesota River Valley.
Okay.
So, gentlemen, we're about out of time. I want to thank Dave for coming in and thank Terry for helping me out today.
Yep.
But before we go, anything you want to say about where you're at and what you guys are doing for people?
I think the biggest thing that we can do for anybody is just to let you know that, well, this dear friend of mine on my left, you're right. Did they say they were right?
Yeah.
And Charlie, I don't know you well, but I know that the obstacles that you guys have paved the way for us, and to let us know that if you can do it, anybody can do it. That's the way I look at it.
That's cool. All right. Again, I want to thank Dave Guzzi, Terry Hansen. I'm Charlie Brose. You've been watching Disability Perspective. We'll see y'all next time.